Hey friends, so I had told you I was going to record a series of videos that kind of shows you a little bit about the starter and what the bread should look like and things of that nature. And I meant to do that earlier this morning. I was running a little bit behind and I forgot. And so I'm going to feed my starter again, but I'm going to actually feed it with you and give you a series of videos of the process of what that looks like. I recently have looked into just feeding a starter without the technical measurements, as I have a few friends that do it and I follow a few people online that also do it. So I gave it a try last night. It worked very well. I'm gonna do it again, see how it works. So you can see, I like to have my starter a little bit lower. I realize doubles a lot better, but we're not too bad. So I'm just gonna go ahead and essentially put in flour in a little bit more. So I'm gonna go grab a little bit more flour. And what I'm doing is just doubling, so I want equal, if not a little bit more flour in there. So now that I've got my flour in there, now I'm going to add my water. And as you heard me mention, try not to use tap water, so I'm just using this. I'm going to essentially fill that up till it covers the flour. And then I'm going to give it a nice mix. I like to use my spatula that is very smooth. It makes it much easier to do. So I'm going to give it a nice mix. And I know what texture I'm looking for, and so that's why I decided to give this method a try, just because I know how wet I like it to get it to double. And so that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm giving it a nice mix, making sure there's no dry bits along the edges. This had doubled really nicely this morning, so giving it a nice mix. Making sure all of the water is incorporated, all of the starter is incorporated. I have 2 of these jars. I've got one actually in the fridge, and then this one. And so the other one, I didn't quite get to use, and so I'm going to actually use it as is, since I stuck it in the fridge when it was completely risen. I'm going to use it for my sticky buns, just because I feel like it doubles enough for the sticky buns. And so this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit more water in it. I want it a little bit more wet. Woo, you didn't see that. Real life here. Okay. And so almost like a tacky glue consistency. So when you have this much in here, it's like really tough to stir. But getting it all mixed up. It's okay if you don't. Oh goodness, I've got it on my hand now. So you can see it's nice and runny, and it's all mixed up. It looks a little chunky, but it's actually not. And so I know it will be good. I just want to make sure I get all that water incorporated. And you'll even see bubble action. That's how you know she was hungry. She was ready to eat. So. All right, so I'm not able to turn this video around, so I'm going to end this section and then come back on here so you can see what she's doing. So, be right back. All right, so you can see here, it is completely mixed in. It looks chunky, but I promise you it's not. And you can see the consistency. It's like a glue consistency. You can actually see some of the bubble action in here as it's liking the its feed. So that's really exciting. So what that means is she's ready to go ahead and put her lid on, and she will just go for 4 to 6 hours, and she'll end up doubling in size. Then from there, we'll go ahead and mix up a batch of bread so that way you can see what it looks like. Hey, it's me again. All right, so it's been about 3 hours since I fed OG, and there should be, here it is. So you can see it was halfway full and it's already hit the rim, and typically it would probably even go over. It's literally to the rim here. You can kind of see here some, and so she is very full. You can see all of the bubbles. She's doubled in size. I'm gonna go ahead and use her to make a loaf of bread. And so just a traditional sourdough loaf is what I'm using her for the purpose of this exercise. And so I actually have my scale. I've got my water already all measured out. Going to put in here 150. So 150 grams of starter. And you can see it like barely made a dent in this, so I'm gonna have to figure out what to make with all of this starter. I'm actually planning on making bagels and pretzels this weekend, so that's gonna be fun. Hoping to get my husband involved in that. So, needless to say, you want to use a very active starter for that, and so there's that. I could probably continue to work off of this in the morning and even tomorrow, before having to feed her again. But I wanted to use some very active starter. What you can see is OG is floating on the top. That's how you know she's ready to go. And so what I'm going to do is I am going to, just like I've told you before, mix in the starter in the water till it almost looks dissolved. And this is called the analase. I think I'm saying that right. And so we're going to go ahead and do that. Sometimes they ask you to have it sit and so on and so forth in some different recipes. I don't think it's necessary. And so, and I haven't seen that it's necessary. So my method is just simply take it from there. And then I got my flour and my salt all measured out as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump this right in here. Make sure I get all the contents out because it's all measured very precisely. And the recipe that you guys got in this class is a recipe for a small loaf. So if you want a regular size loaf, you would double that recipe. I think I forgot to mention that into the class, so I apologize if I did. Or maybe I did and just haven't. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing is I'm making one large recipe. One recipe, so it's a double, so it's a one large loaf. So I'm just gonna go ahead and mix this until fully combined. You can, like I mentioned before, mix it in the stand mixer for about 8 minutes until it completely comes off the sides. So what I'm doing is I'm just mixing this in here until it completely comes off the sides. And I will show you what I mean in just a second. So as you know, we had liquid and then we had our flour. So. a trick to use to make sure that the flour doesn't stick to your hands or the dough is you can wet your fingers. That works. Let me see if I can show you. So there you go. You can see that it's all completely away from the sides and it picks up nicely. You see that? So that's the consistency you want. You can do a traditional fold like we did in class, where you fold it, leave it sit for 30 minutes, fold it, leave it sit for 30 minutes. That's going to help get some aeration into your dough. Or you can do the lazy method that I do when I don't have time at home. And after your dough is already all nice and mixed together, you can go ahead and just let it sit all night. So, you know, if you start it in the evening like I did, I started the starter at 7 o'clock. It is now, and then I started mixing this at 10. It is now 10:20, so I'm gonna go ahead and cover it for the night, leave it sit all night long. In the morning, I'll show you what it looks like when it's all proofed. It's gonna double in size, and what the texture looks like to that. Then I'm gonna go ahead and punch it down, put it in its final container, let it proof. The rest of the day, probably in the fridge, because it's an 8 to 10 hour day for me. And then once it's proofed for the second rise, I will bake it off when I get home. So I will show you what this looks like in the morning though, and then go over those steps as I do them. So right now, what we did is we took from the starter, went ahead and from the starter, we made our dough, mixed it until it was completely pulling away from the edges, and kind of formed it into a nice little ball in our bowl. And so, show you what that looks like here. You can see it doesn't cover much. By morning, it should have doubled in size. If not going, so it's way down here, it should go at least up to here. So we'll see. See you in the morning. Okay, so it is 6:15 in the morning, and I get to be quiet because my husband is sleeping, but this is what the dough looks like. You can see it's got a little jiggle, and it's doubled in size. So you can see that it's, you know, tacky to the touch, you would say, but it's not leaving anything in my fingers. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this out. We're gonna punch it down like this, taking it off the sides of the bowl like this. And then I'm going to shape it, put it in here, and from there, I am going to cover it for a few hours. I'm going to actually leave this one out on the counter until noon, and then I'm gonna stick it in the fridge and bake it off. So I will be back. Okay, so after getting it in the Banneton basket, I realized that it really did proof, so you can see how it jiggles. And so I don't want it to overproof by leaving it out on the counter for more than 4 hours. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stick it in the fridge because I am not going to be home. I'm going to work, and I can't control my ability to take a look at it. I don't have a nanny cam, can't look at it, can't physically move it into the fridge when I'm ready. So I'm just gonna go ahead and stick it in the fridge anyways. And that's not gonna hurt it. What the fridge does is it slows down that proofing process. It's still going to proof, but at an incredibly slower rate. So we're gonna do that, and then I will pop back on when I take it out of the fridge and bake it. All right, I almost forgot. So you can see it's double risen. I'll go ahead, and it's still jiggly. I'm gonna dump it out and bake it off. This is what she looks like going in the oven. All right, friends, time to take her out of the oven. grabbing my rack so that way I can show you what she looks like. So get you down here, down close and personal. All right, I always, why is this smooth? Here's the reveal. Let's see if I can show you. She comes out nice and beautiful. Look at that golden crust. She's a beauty. So that's what you do.